please meet Manuel Boutet. He's a sociologist of innovation at Université Côte d'Azur, and I must say that I'm quite impatient to listen to what he got in terms of content from this workshop. So please, Manuel, you have the pressure and the honor to get the microphone and to make the conclusion.
Yeah, thank you, Thibaut. Yeah, I'm sorry I totally improvised everything during the days there, and so I'm not sure what I will present, but I try to tinker some slides. Yeah, the first thing is I wanted to thank everybody because it was such a wonderful days for me to see biocontrol with lenses that I participated to build and force everybody to speak about all these things that I'm passionate about, but that are often in the background of the projects. Yeah, I'm sociologist, as Thibaut was saying, so it will be perhaps some elements that you can go back. I don't know, I'm supposed to... yeah, it's that. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I captured some slides from Thibaut from the start, and I think, yeah, the first ideas we had was to really open the view about all of the people that presented here are tinkering and building the project, developing the project with the technical aspects, yes, but also with all that very richness that is present in all the presentation. To open the view and just think, the first things I wanted you to go with, yeah, sorry, I will just finish my introduction. So yeah, we had that idea that perhaps there are some discourses, some ways to think about biocontrol that are the most easy way to just tell the tale of development of biocontrol development that is focused on products, on biocontrol company, and we can understand why, because they had a very central place to develop the field in the past 20 years or 30 years, depending how you want to count. But to open the view to all the ways biocontrol is developed, we thought that that notion of business model would be interesting because it's a way to say there is an economic part in all the project, and it's something that we need to think about. But there are also a lot of other elements in the context that can explain the success of the project. And we discussed about aesthetics, about public, about education, childs, about women. There were a lot of other elements that intervened and that were in each singular project very important. So yeah, I think we succeeded in that sense, but we will have a workshop tomorrow morning to go further in the analysis, so I don't want to try to do the work that we will do together tomorrow. I wanted just to give you a scientific text of sociology. It's a very recent one from 1996 about the building of market. It's an important text. It's in French, sorry. You can find it on internet and read it freely. It's a very important turning point for us in sociology because before we had that very nice habit to just tell to the economist, but it's much more complicated, you know. Economy is too simple, and in fact reality is so rich. Nice argument, but in the 1980s, we started to do something more precise, which was describing all the elements that was necessary to make a market as the economists were modeling them. And so in that case, it's a very little market about strawberries where producers build a beautiful place to make the market of strawberries there as a perfect market in the sense of the economist. And it's a building, it's the way you install the producers, the buyers, separate them, you manage the information that go from them, you allow the buyers to see the strawberries before, and it changed everything in the market of strawberries and in that production at the time. So it's a very nice text about all the elements you need to put together to build the market. And it means also for us that there are a lot of different configurations that are possible, not only one model, and that even if often perhaps and we saw that in the different projects, you have the impression that you are just trying to tinker with constraints, with a lot of constraints in all the biological projects. In fact, there is a possibility of creativity in a sense to make something meaningful with all those constraints. So the first thing to take with you would be to look at the practices. It was our bet with these days. I think it's a success in that sense. Thinking to understand biocontrol, the best would be to look at the projects, how they are developed, and just forget for a moment what we think is biocontrol and just looking at concrete development and experience. Second point would be, I think something that is very present in all the presentation is the very central place of research, but also not only on the moment of conception or invention, or not only in the first stage of lab, but also the fact that there is a lot of research that will have to be in the system once it's developed. We had yesterday a very nice example in Africa, and even with the solution already developed, there were a lot of work to do and a lot of links to develop with research, and in some cases it was network of researchers. It was also a question of transmitting the knowledge from labs in America to researchers in Africa. So the fact that there is something to think about the place of the knowledge in biology and the ability to do research in biology and put it into the system, I think it's something that is very important to have in mind. Especially if we think about not only changing the present system, but also building a better system of agriculture, of farming that will be able to change, not one fixed system for another, but perhaps also something that is more dynamic. Often the place that research would have in the developed system, I think I saw that, has something to do with the fact that solutions have to be adapted for a specific territory or a specific ecosystem, different for at least each state, but perhaps we could think something more fine-grained. But it means that it has to be partly rebuilt in each place. So we cannot just think schematic of innovation where we go lab, then you have the invention, then you have to develop it. No, in fact, you have to reinvent it and adapt it regularly. So research has a place even in the developed system. I'm a sociologist, so I was just amazed by the multiplicity of factors involved. In a first sense, that would be the very particular link that would be made with local culture, and the social intelligence of the places where the techniques are developed. Sometimes it's something that looks like an obstacle. For example, the Strega case yesterday, I loved it, but yeah, it's not only that. It's little farms, essentially women operating the farm. It was told, but it was not very clear because the official communication of the project was a man in front of the field. But yeah, it was mainly women on little exploitation. It could have been like a very big obstacle. How do you make a supply chain with that? And in fact, it was a very big something that was very useful for the project, and they built on that because they use the fact that there is a community of women, sociabilities that are specific to women, to invent the person that would grow the inoculate. So, and it was inside rice, inside pots, so it was in the life and imaginary of women there. They use the tools they use usefully, quotidianly. No, sorry. And it was a woman that was growing the inoculate and giving it to the women that were the farmers. So in fact, they used that thing that could have been a weakness for the project, an obstacle, as something that was very a way to develop it and to distribute it. So yeah, and it was said it's a gender-specific problem. We offered a gender-specific solution. It was something that emerged just from the fact that in the project, for some reason, they listen. And they listened to the social condition of the people they were trying to work with. It's, I think, something very important. I heard also this morning, sit down with the farmer and look at his plots. Beautiful, I think, advice for all the biocontrol projects. That idea that, in fact, it's possible to build with the social conditions that are met by the project. For the flowers in Yucca, it was even something very interesting because they put flowers with the fields, and then the schools were meeting with them, coming to ask them, it would be nice to do something with the child about those wildflowers, so they gave seeds to the schools. And it's a way that you can grow biocontrol and the awareness of biocontrol by just not necessarily just listening. Yeah, I think it's one of my points. Just sometimes there is a lot of opportunities that you can build on just by being ready to listen and build on that. And then the other way, the multiplicity of actors was very sensible for me, was the fact that there are alternate measurements of gain to expect for the technique, not only yields or efficacy. I heard yesterday, I think it's against the Strega, sorry. She was saying, when we measure it, we have like a 40% growth of production, but it's not the important fact. The fact is the crops were destroyed and now there is a crop. So saving the crop. It was also the question of public health that is coming back very often in the presentation. Something about empowering of farmers. There is the question of landscape aesthetics, the question of biodiversity. I heard also the very nice things about from the States, United States, any percent is a contribution. We are not necessarily in a model where there is one product. It has to be totally effective. Perhaps we are in integrated plant management, so there is variety of techniques that are used together. So yeah, there is perhaps other ways to measure the interest, the efficacy, the value of the technique. There is also a lot of things about the knowledge that is produced. It was totally clear with the question of monitoring, but it was also already present in other projects. All the projects are building knowledge and a knowledge about farming, but also about the environment and biodiversity, the ecosystems. And that knowledge is something that can be shared as not only perhaps a byproduct, but also something that will increase the awareness of the general public about those techniques, about the questions that we try to address. So yeah, it's also a way of valuation of those projects, and I think it's something we have in mind. It's complicated because it leads to a view that is a little multidimensional. Perhaps there is at least one dimension by actors. Some of the presenters made that very interesting work to describe for each partner what is his interest, what is contributing. And it means that in each project, perhaps it's multidimensional, with each actor, perhaps even richer than that. So yeah, it's a different way to look at the project, not necessarily only of optimization with one criterion, but I think it's one of the ways we can develop biocontrol. A very important thing, I think, is it's not from me. It was Anne-Violette that was telling me that today. She was saying, yeah, it's strange because in all the projects that we saw from yesterday, it took 15 to 20 years to develop them. Yeah, okay. It's kind of frightening, I think. It gives us a sense of the work that we have to do today to develop biocontrol, that we will need time, but also that we will need to find ways, and it's part a question of collective investment, of funding, partly, perhaps of funding that is not by little piece of 3 years. But you have to, yeah. Sometimes I was in awe in front of all the work that some of the presenters were presenting very fast, because it's kind of the kind of work you don't want to talk about. But some slides were very clear about the very hard work of paving fundings to succeed to make a 20-year projects with fundings that are sometimes for 1 year. Last presentation, she was saying, yeah, perhaps we have sometimes a problem that we don't know if we will have the money for this year. So yeah, there is something to think, both to go faster, but also to have some structures of support that will allow that kind of innovation, with perhaps little, because it means that there are a lot of projects that will just disappear because just 1 year they don't have fundings, because there is one person that has the competency, and for 1 year there is no more money to pay him, so he will disappear, and then the project the whole project will disappear. So yeah. And yeah. It was the last point. It was to prepare the work that we will try to do in the next weeks with all the data we collected there, and starting with tomorrow the work about business model with the presenters. I think we need to build something that is a more precise, a more complete roadmap of the ways that we can develop biocontrol today. Not only on the technical and scientific sides, but also what we try to do now on the organizational side. With some things that are very clear. I mean, I could have, but it's the work of tomorrow. I think I could have speak about the difference between product and service. It was very interesting in all the talks, because we saw that sometimes biocontrol is successfully developed as a product, but sometimes it's successfully developed as a service, and sometimes even some representatives change their positioning on that point. Or we have some examples where the service is free, but preparing the selling of the product. So there are a lot of very interesting clues to follow for us there, and that suggests at least that there are more than one avenue of development of biocontrol, and we have to open our minds to that diversity. Yeah, sorry, I forgot what was lacking. I think if we want to go further together, we will have perhaps later another meeting to talk more about difficulties, about conflicts, about the question of governance in the project that are there. Given the richness of what was presented, we saw some of the presenters following the grid we proposed, and yeah, it took the time. I mean, it was not possible to go very further in the time we had. But yeah, when it was done, then it was very clear for me that there are some points about who takes the decision, who makes the choices, what are the conflicts, what are in the case where it was multinational, and what are the companies that failed. Yeah, I think we failed to develop or to apply in some country the solution that was developed with success everywhere else. So yeah, I think we have some work to do on that point. But yeah, let's keep that for later. I think what we try to do, and it's again a slide of Thibaut, what we try to do is really to find ways to understand and support the different kind of biocontrol strategies and the business models that are associated. And yeah, it's a process. We worked, I think, very well. So thank you, everybody. And
do you have questions for Manuel or comments? Yes. And Violette.
So thank you, Manu. Actually, I have one question, because all the examples we saw in the last 2 days was like unique example with one lever for one pest in one context. And actually, IPM is more a combination of levers. So we had just one example with food supplementation and the synergy with different type of food supplementation. So I'm wondering how we can include that in the thinking and the imagination of agriculture.
Thank you. Very, very nice question. In fact, it's because we have for. You want to answer, Laura? Yes. She will save me.
No, I'm sure that you have the same idea, but we already talked about that with Manuel, and I think that there are no time for people inside the biocontrol area to talk together and to think about the complementarities of all the proposition, technical proposition and products and all this kind of thing. And I think that the industry is constructing without looking at the diversity of biocontrol, because it's difficult to run a company or a project, etc., etc.
Well,
Yes. I think very often we have a lab-centered approach, and what we need to do that is something that is more a territory-centered approach. But you see, perhaps today we made some steps in that direction, just by saying perhaps it's good to just see that when we develop biocontrol and we have very successful cases, it's with the population, with the farmers, with the spatial relationship that they have there. I think there were a lot of elements that were going to also the fact that biologists have a place in the project to adapt each technique to the specificity of the territory. So I think there are some steps in that direction, but it's true that if we stay in a laboratory-centered approach, we miss the question that is totally, you're right, essential of the complementary of the techniques. When I was taking that word, each % is important, I think if we think like that, then we have to go look in the fields how the persons are adding.
I think like everybody in the biocontrol talks about integrated pest management. So I think we are all aware that we need to integrate many tools to add them. And there are many examples of combination that are working perfectly. If I think of SIT, like it's compatible with many different tools, and that's also, there are many examples of this use, like Martin was mentioning the use of SIT plus mating disruption. And but I agree, like if you want to implement it on the field, it means that you add even more actors to your value chain. So people need to talk together and need to think not as competitors, but as collaborators towards the goal of reducing the best way possible the pest.
Well, thanks for this question. And actually, so I had some time to think about it. So I would just like to take the opportunity to advertise a little what is incoming in some of the projects that are actually behind those logos here on the slide. Because for a couple of years, actually, I think that the public bodies in Europe and in France have this idea in mind that indeed we are focusing on each pest or each technique, and we need to combine. There is indeed an obsession about that, because we obviously observe that each kind of stakeholder is working in its own small specific field. And so most of the projects or programs, more specifically programs that will finance projects, actually are currently being designed based on area-wide management or place-based dynamics. For example, in this France 2030 program, there is a call currently open about démonstrateurs territoriaux, like place-based demonstrators, in many EU projects as well. Actually, networks of places, remarkable places, are getting designed. Some of us have a project that was just accepted last Friday called Acropix. And well, it's actually a network of remarkable agroecological crop protection areas. And actually the question now for us is also, well, we are having these places created or identified. Now, how can we work with them, try to anchor our works and projects with these actors? How can we meet and really co-design with players that are in the field and not just like feel that we are doing so, but not really? So I think that this is one of the challenges, actually. I think we got the different ingredients. Now how to really co-design, co-innovate, co-work, combining in practice. I think that this is a challenge ahead. Yeah, I think perfect transition, Laure. Actually, so we have to end. This is the end of this event. So I got like 2 minutes to thank Manuel. Manuel, thank you for this difficult exercise that we imposed you, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Thibaut.
So we hope that you enjoyed this event. This journey in the business models was a pleasant trip. That this conceptual framework was something useful to like think out of the box, to discover all the diversity which is behind what we call biocontrol in our daily life. I would like to finish by thanking people again. So, of course, all the organizing committee, all the speakers that had a hard time preparing and giving their talks. And here in Paris, from the front of the room until the end, thank you, Laure, because Laure has been all the time checking the chronometer. And if we are finalizing at approximately 5 and not at 7 at night, it's thanks to her. Thank you to all of you to be here in Paris. Thank you to all the audience. Remotely, we know how difficult it is to remain stuck in front of a computer for a whole day. So we hope we manage to keep you fit until the end of the day. And finally, well, a big thank you to this dark place over there, to Jérôme, that you will never see. He's like close to his... Ah, yes, we see him. Thank you, Noémie. You saw Noémie sometimes giving some advice. You saw also Anani. Anani has run a lot during these 2 days. And, well, the premium is for Miriam. Miriam has organized approximately everything, so let's not forget her brilliant work. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you very much. That was really great. And I think that everybody enjoyed the organization here. And so thank you very much. Of course, this event wouldn't even have existed without you. So thank you very much. And who do I forget? No.
Thank you, Thibaut, very much for this organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, well, time to close. We are getting offline. Thank you very much. And, well, I'm sure we will discuss about this topic within a few days. Bye-bye.